Howdy and welcome to episode 50 of T-Shirts and Shawls. I'm Karen and today is Thursday, March 8th, 2018. And I'm just going to jump right into the episode. So I moved the camera up higher so that way I could get a little more of an angle in filming. And so this time you can actually see my shirt while I'm recording. So this is the shirt that I actually just got recently, that I had ordered before the previous podcast episode, and then it's arrived within that time. And if you are a podcast viewer and you watched the previous episode, you may have seen me stop a few times, and there are Wally's ears. He's coming to check it out. You may have seen me stop a few times because I needed to get some yarn that Eva had grabbed and run off with. So I wrote about this in the Ravelry thread for that podcast episode, but I wanted to go ahead and talk about it on the podcast too. So apparently it wasn't all that innocent with Eva running off with the yarn. Wally ate some of the yarn. I did not find that out until the next day, so Friday, the day after recording the previous episode, when it started coming out. I'm gonna try my best to keep this, keep the details, not too terrible. So it started coming out, and I went to go clean Wally and realized that there was still more yarn, and I know that it can be very dangerous for cats to eat yarn, especially if it's any type of string, because it can get kind of wrapped up in their internal organs as it travels its path. And if you start to pull on it, it can cause damage if it gets stuck anywhere. So I did not pull. Instead, we got to go and spend the morning at the emergency vet. Which is a really, really great place, this particular emergency vet, but not a place that I would never enjoy going to the emergency vet. But the past 3 times that I went to this emergency vet were with Merlin, and then Guinevere, and then Sam, and those were the 3 times that we did not bring them home. So I didn't think that we were in that kind of situation with Wally, but yeah, it's not a fun visit, but again, it's a great office, and they treated us really well. Anyway, so they were able to remove what seemed like the rest of the yarn, and we kept a close eye on Wally over the next few days, and he seemed fine. So we were fortunate that nothing really terrible happened. So I'm very thankful for that. So I will be I've been watching extra closely the past 2 weeks, and I will be watching as I'm recording this episode to make sure that they are not getting in any trouble. And if Wally's right here on my lap, then I guess he won't be able to get in trouble. So anyway, so I had ordered this shirt. So it's a cat playing with some yarn, or knitting some yarn. I had ordered this shirt before that episode before that whole incident happened. So when I got the shirt, I was like, oh, I don't really know if I feel like wearing this now. But I think that it's a good reminder that that we see these images of cats playing with yarn. So this one, cats knitting, cats playing with a ball of yarn. That's kind of that iconic image that we think of. But I did want to, like I said, even though I've mentioned this on the discussion thread for the previous episode, I did want to talk about it on this episode just as a kind of a PSA. We think that it's really, really cute for cats to play with yarn, but it can be very dangerous. It can lead to surgery if it does get stuck, and it can unfortunately lead to death if either it's not removed and it gets stuck, or if it's I won't go into details. It could just be very, very bad. Anyway, and when I posted in the discussion thread about it, a couple of you guys did respond that you've had some experiences yourself with your cats. So this is definitely something that is not uncommon. See where Wally is going to try to go, make sure he's not getting in any yarn. So it's not uncommon. So it's just something that if you have cats, just really make sure you keep an eye on. I definitely don't want you guys to have to go through that experience, especially one that does not turn out quite as well. So, so cute images of cats and yarn, but again, the reality is that it can be quite dangerous, so just be careful. But as you can see, Wally is great. Even though he's been a little bit of a pain, I think he just really wants attention this morning. So I have knitted socks stacked up in my bedroom, ones that I've worn that need to get washed. Since I wash them separately, they don't go into the laundry with everything else. So apparently last night, I guess Wally had a good time with them, and Luke found one of them in his playroom this morning. So Wally had grabbed one and run off with it. And it happened to be a pair of socks that I had just finished recently, the mustache yarn, the pumpkin spice latte, if you watch the podcast. One of those that he ran off with. It looks like the sock was not damaged, so I don't have to worry about Wally eating anything or the sock itself being damaged. So I've moved that stack, so hopefully it's not as enticing. But cats really do like wool quite a bit. So especially if you have wool yarn, be really careful about that. There just seems to be something about wool that really attracts them. So anyway, that's a little story. Fortunately, it turned out okay for us and taught me to really keep an eye on the cats, make sure they're not getting into too much trouble. Unfortunately, I have not had a lot of knitting time the past 2 weeks, and so I have not gotten a lot done. What has taken up my time is, if you've watched the podcast, I mentioned before that I do copy editing. I work for Ply Magazine, and then I also copy edit novels, mostly fantasy fiction that authors self-publish. So I had a novel project on my desk for the past 3 weeks, and it just took, especially with trying to make sure I'm also doing prep for DFW Fiber Fest, it's taken up a lot more time. And I had to use my usual evening knitting time to work on the editing. So that is why I don't have that much to show you guys. But I did make some progress, so let me dig through my box of knitting and show you guys what I've been working on. So at the very beginning, okay, so now that I've emptied my basket that I keep all my knitting projects in, Wally has just climbed in it. So maybe he'll have fun in there in an empty basket. Anyway, so at the kind of right after recording the podcast episode, I think it was over the weekend or something, I did work 6 more rows of my Let Go cardigan. So the cardigan had made some pretty good progress, but now it's kind of stalled. I really have not worked on it much at all since those 6 rows. And I think part of that is because even though I'm still enjoying this project, there are other things that I kind of want to finish sooner, and B, the weather, even though it's kind of still going back and forth, it's mostly on the warmer end or getting warmer end, and so I'm not quite in a rush now to finish this cardigan, but I would definitely like to have it for the fall, so want to keep that in mind and make sure I get it finished by the fall. So that's kind of I will try to make sure that I work on it, but it's not a priority project. The socks that I've been knitting from the Brazen Stitchery self-striping yarn, I haven't touched them. So I do need to get back to that. My other sweater project that I started last time, Boxy, I have done a little bit more on it. So I actually forgot to mark where I was last time, but I think it was only, maybe I've done about twice as much as I had from last time. Not really sure, but so still a lot to go there. I'm supposed to keep going until I have, now I can't remember if it's 14 or 17 inches, something like that, either 14 or 17 inches of the stockinette. So still a long way to go for this. But again, I'm not really in a super big rush to finish it, and since it's a super easy project, it's kind of one that I grab whenever I need a project that I don't want to have to think about. So last night at Luke's swim lesson, that was what I was working on, and so I got a little bit more done on that. But again, it's not a priority project. What is more of a priority project, but which I didn't get a whole lot done, is the Free Your Fade shawl. So this is my entry for our quarterly knit along, which ends at the end of this month, at the end of March. So I do need to finish this so that way I can actually have it done in time for the knit along. And I apologize if you see Wally's tail flick around. He's right up here on the desk. Anyway, so last time I talked about deciding that instead of adding in a brand new third color, I was going to return to the color I had used at the beginning and use that as color 3, just to really tie all of this together. So that's what I've started. I've added in that color now, and I finished the add-in section, and now I'm starting the first full repeat of just the green. And what I did, because I don't have a lot of the green left, and I want to make sure Wally doesn't jump up there, so let's grab him for a minute. Because I don't have a lot of the green left, since I hadn't originally planned on doing it this way, I knit an extra section of the color 2, which is the sparkle, or not sparkle, speckle, the speckle yarn. So I knit another section of that before I started the fade. And then, because this is a shawl that really, you don't have to follow exactly what the pattern says, and you can end anytime you want. And honestly, right now, it's pretty long. And if you look at my needles, it's bunched up on the needles, so it's even wider than this. So probably any time that I want to end this would be fine. So what I'm doing is I have a scale that weighs in grams, which, by the way, if you're ever trying to figure out, do I have enough yarn to finish a certain number of rows, make sure you have a scale that weighs in grams, and you can weigh your yarn and see like how many grams it takes to knit 2 rows, and then you'll know, okay, well, I have this many grams left, so therefore, yes or no, I have enough to knit the next 2 rows. Don't forget your bind off. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing to see how much each section uses, and then if I have enough of the yarn to do another section, then I'll do another section, and I'll keep doing that until I don't have enough green yarn left. And then, because the pattern calls for a picot bind off, which really eats up yarn, my plan is the last 2 rows to go back to the middle yarn, the speckle yarn, and to do those last 2 rows in that yarn, and then do the bind off, the picot bind off in that. So again, I'll just really be tying these 2 colors together even more. So that is the plan, and I'm telling you guys this, I will be done by the end of the month. So that way it can be an official entry into our knit along, even though I don't win prizes, but that's fine. I like finishing, because when I don't finish, such as the Beauty and the Beast shawl, sometimes it takes a little longer for projects to get done. So that is really what I've been knitting. There is one sample sock I've been working on, but I will talk about that in the what I'm dyeing section. It is now under a month before DFW Fiber Fest, so I am definitely in that push to do a lot of dyeing so I can prepare for the event. And especially because this is the first event in a series, first full weekend in April is DFW Fiber Fest, and then at the end of June I have Houston Fiber Fest, and then Yarn Crawl is in August, and then I have the Into the Wool Fiber Retreats in September, and in November I have the East Texas Fiber Festival. And so that doesn't give a lot of time between festivals to do a bunch of dyeing for those. So I have to remember that I'm going to have more festivals coming up, and basically it's going to be kind of nonstop dyeing between here and November. So, and then I get a little bit of a break, and then I start the whole cycle again, usually is what's been happening. So what I've been working on is self-striping yarn. So I actually just yesterday released a new self-striping color, and so that's what my knitting time that I do have, I've been focused on working on it. So if you're on my mailing list, you already saw this, and some of you have already bought it. Thank you. So this is the new self-striping color, It is, so 4 stripes, pink is in there twice, and then it alternates with blue and the tan. And I'm thinking I'm going to need to block this one because the where the double pointed needle meets seems like it's really creating a line. Anyway, so this is the new colorway. I just this morning finished the heel flap. So the next thing is the turn and then the gusset. So making pretty good progress on this sample sock. So the name of this colorway is Elaine of Corbenic. And Corbenic was a castle where the Grail was kept. And so Elaine's father was the keeper of the Grail. And he had this knowledge. And none of the stories really explain where this knowledge came from. But somehow he knew that the union of his daughter, Elaine, and Sir Lancelot, the knight, would produce a man, a child who would grow to be a man who would be the most perfect, the most renowned, the best knight of the world. And he would also be able to achieve, have success at the Grail quest. And so Elaine's father, pretty much got Elaine to agree to try to get Lancelot into her bed. Starting with trying to get him to marry her, so starting to get it to be something that's legitimate. But Lancelot's not really interested in getting married because he's in love with Guinevere, and he really is kind of focused on her, even though he can never, declare his relationship publicly. He's not interested in other women, so he doesn't really even seem to notice Elaine. And some stories have Elaine kind of be a bit of a victim, kind of having her father force her into it, and other stories have her be a very willing participant. But anyway, what happens is Elaine, through trickery, gets Lancelot to sleep with her. So she gets him drunk and uses, basically it's completely in the dark, so he can't see anything. And she has a ring, either one that looks exactly like a ring that Guinevere has, or she's actually gotten the ring from Guinevere, so that Lancelot thinks that he is with Guinevere. And they have their tryst, Lancelot the whole time thinking it's Guinevere, and Elaine gets pregnant. And sure enough, the baby is born, is Galahad, and when he grows up, he is the most perfect knight. A lot of times kind of a boring knight because he's so perfect. But the most perfect knight, and he is one of the 3 knights who does achieve the Grail quest. And he's kind of the one that is seen as like the fully achieve. The other 2 knights that achieve the quest kind of, they do it, but not quite to the same extent that Galahad does. And Eva's making some noise on something, so I'm gonna go check out what she's doing. Hang on. Okay, she was just going after the place where I had put the yarn last time, so she's smart. She knows where to look. Anyway, so Galahad. So he fully achieves the Grail quest. And perfect knight, so that whatever knowledge Elaine's father had was accurate, and it produces Galahad. So anyway, so this is Elaine of Corbenic, the name of the color. So I've got that one, and then I finally dyed another batch of the Underwater Bridge. This sample sock has been on hold because I had just done 1 mini skein, which is not quite enough to do a full sock. Even with a solid heel, it just wasn't enough. So I finally dyed some more of it, and now I just need to reskein it because I just dyed it, and then I will be able to finish off this sample sock. So basically, between now and DFW Fiberfest, it's all about the sample socks, because I do also have 2 other colorways that I have dyed, that if I want to release for Fiberfest, I need to at least have enough of it knit up so I can show what the colors look like. So that is something that I am working on. So again, free or fade, knitting because I want to finish that for this quarter, and then sample socks. That's pretty much what I'm going to be working on for the next month. But speaking of things that have been knitted, I am so thrilled with the sample knitters that I've been using. A, because I don't have time to knit all the things myself, and B, because they've just done such a great job. I've shown you guys some of the samples that I've gotten already, and then in the past 2 weeks I've gotten a few more samples, so I want to show those off. So the first thing is a crochet project. So this is some of my self-striping yarn, Exchange of Winnings. It's a 3-stripe color. And this is a crochet sock pattern by Karen Hooley, which is a really fabulous crochet designer. So the nice thing about this is it's a mix and match type of pattern. So she has different cuffs and different, I think it's definitely different heels. And I believe it's different cuffs, maybe even different toes. I need to look back at the pattern, but definitely different heels. So you can tell from the 2 socks that the heels are different. So that's why if the socks look like they don't match, they're not supposed to. They have different heels. So I thought that's really great to show off the different options. And these are crochet socks. Isn't that cool? Since I'm not a crocheter, I don't really know much about crochet socks. But I think they look really neat, and they've got a nice texture. So I am looking forward to showing those off and showing that even though I may not crochet, this is some of the stuff that you can do with the yarn. And then the next project that I have is something out of my Lace Weight Isolde base. So that is a blend of BFL, Blue Face Leicester, and silk, which is just fabulous feeling. And so this is a tank top. And with this tank top, it has this neck here in the front that is this lace. So everything else is just stockinette, but it's got this beautiful lace, drapey kind of neck type of thing. So that I think is really gorgeous. And Sample Knitter did a really great job. And I imagine this is quite a labor of love because look at the miles and miles of stockinette in lace weight yarn that this pattern calls for. But I think this is a really fun pattern because especially here in Texas, you could put a tank top on underneath this and then put this on, and it's very lightweight and you can wear your knitting even in the summer. I think this would be a really great project. So I'm really happy with how that turned out. And I think it's nice to have something with lace weight yarn besides a shawl, because that seems to be like the go-to with lace weight, always doing a shawl. So there are other options you can do if you don't mind doing miles of stockinette in lace weight yarn. So that was great. And then I have this one. This is out of my Avalon base, and Avalon is a DK weight blend of merino and silk. And you guys, I wish you could feel this. And in fact, if you're coming to DFW Fiberfest, you can feel it. This is just so delightfully squishy. So it's a very long wrap, and it's got a point at this end, and then the other end comes in. So it's kind of like almost like an arrow kind of thing, but it's, so you can see the kind of the chevron pattern. Isn't this fabulous? Just look at this. I love it. I think it's really, really great. So this is the dark brown is Lionel. The pink is Gwyneth. The lighter brown in here is Sir Kay. And then the blue in the center is Igraine. So I will actually have, so I've been trying to decide whenever when I have the samples set up at my booth, if I'm going to actually do kits or if I'm going to just like have the sample set out and then, you guys can pick the colors you want. Because I know sometimes people really do fall in love with the colors. I love the colors. I love how this turned out. Some people really do fall in love with the colors used in the sample, and some people want to pick their own. But with this pattern, all of the colors were able to be done with one skein except for the dark brown. The sample knitter did need a little bit into another skein in order to finish off the pattern as written with the dark brown. But not a whole lot. I think she said it was 11 grams. So out of 100 grams, 11 grams, it's kind of annoying to have to buy an entire skein of yarn just for that much. So I think what I'm going to do, in fact, I know what I'm going to do, is I'm going to have a couple of kits with these colors, with these specific colors, and I'm going to take one skein of the brown and divide it up into some smaller skeins. And so the kit will have one skein of the pink, the lighter brown, and the blue, and then one full skein plus one partial skein of the dark brown. So that way, anyone who buys the kit will have enough yarn to knit the project, but also not end up with a whole bunch of extra at the end. Not that having extra Avalon is a terrible thing, but I thought it would be nice to do that. So I will have kits in this color at DFW Fiberfest. We'll see how that goes, and if the kits go well, then maybe I will do more kits, not just for this pattern, but for some of the other patterns as well. So I love this. I love all my samples. Thank you so much to the sample knitters. So excited to be able to show these off, and I have 2 more samples that should be coming in. So yeah, and like, you know, this is huge and soft, and I love it, love it, love it. So I love all of the samples that I've had. Yeah, so that's what I'm working on with what I'm dyeing. Really just prepping for DFW Fiberfest, and making sure that that goes well, because that honestly is my biggest event of the year, and it kind of is the one that, to me, it feels like it sets the tone for the rest of the year. So I'm really excited about it. I should have at least one more episode before then, and then I think my goal will be to take some video while I'm at DFW Fiberfest to be able to put that in a future episode. But just under a month away, lots of prep time to go before we get there. So I haven't had a what I'm designing section in a while because, again, if you are a podcast viewer, you know I'm kind of taking a little bit of a break from designing. But I do actually have some designing news. So the first thing is that this hat pattern is my Herald hat. And so called it that because I think these look like little scrolls. So this pattern is part of the DFW Designers collection. So it is a collection that releases a pattern every month. And so March is my month for this pattern. So it has been released, and it is only currently available in the collection. So you have to buy the entire collection, get all the patterns. I mean, you have to get all the patterns. So right now, in order to get this, you have to buy the collection. You will get all the patterns that come in the collection, as well as this hat. The collection runs through August. So again, each month, new patterns will be added. So at the end of August, when the collection is over, so basically the beginning of September, then I will release this as an individual pattern. So if you are interested in this, but you don't want to buy the whole collection, then wait until September and it will be released. If you are in the DFW area, the collection is really great because it introduces you to designers that are in the DFW area. Anyway, but if you are watching this if you are in the DFW area and you are watching this podcast on the day it's released, which basically means, especially since I release it in late afternoon, that you watch it right after it gets released, I am having a cast-on party tonight at the Knitting Fairy for this hat pattern. So tonight I will be up at the Knitting Fairy, and if you want to actually cast on for the hat, that's great. Or if you have questions about the pattern, I'm there. Or if you just want to sit and knit anything, that's fine as well. But again, that is tonight, so probably by the time most of you watch this episode, it might already be past. So I'm looking forward to the cast-on party. It's always fun to get up to the Knitting Fairy and do some knitting. So my other designing news is that this shawl, the lace weight Dame Nature shawl, the test knitters are done. I have gotten feedback from them. So really I need to move on to the next step of releasing the shawl pattern. So one of the steps is I still need to take photos. And apparently also I need to do some steam blocking because it's gotten a bit wrinkled. So I need to take photos, and I've been dragging my feet on that. I really just want to take the pictures myself, which means usually I use my sister as my model, and her schedule is just super busy, and we just haven't had a chance to really get the pictures done. So that's what's kind of holding up the process. And then I need to send it to my graphic designer and have her do the layout. And I need to find out what her schedule is like. My goal is to have this released in time for DFW Fiber Fest. And I hope still to be able to do that. But probably at this point, I won't have print copies of the pattern at DFW Fiber Fest because it takes a while. The printer that I use takes a while, unless I want to pay a giant rush fee to get the printed copies. So I probably need to put those in by next week if I want to get print copies. So it's possible that it could happen, but it's not hugely likely at this point. But hopefully I will be able to at least have the pattern where I can say it is available on Ravelry and you can get it there. I'm telling you guys this because, again, it's kind of an accountability thing. If I tell you guys about it and you are looking forward to the pattern release, then I hope you will kind of gently nudge me with some reminders to get moving and stop dragging my heels on this pattern. Because it's definitely been something that has taken a lot of time to get from the point where I first had the idea up to the release. If you've followed along in the podcast, then you hopefully remember the story. If you are a first-time viewer or you haven't watched far enough back, basically I knit the entire shawl. It has a floral motif. I went to block it and realized that the floral motif when you're wearing the shawl was upside down, so I had to reknit the entire thing. So yeah, it's been a bit of a process, but hopefully at some point it will actually be released. But I'm getting closer. So the test knitters, getting their feedback is a very valuable part of the process. So just need to move on to the next step now. Reminder about this quarter's knit along. So the quarter ends on the last day of March. So you've got a little bit more time if you have a project on the needles, possibly enough time to cast on something and finish it by the end of the month. Depending on your knitting speed, but make sure that if you are participating in the knit along that you post your FO by the last day of March, because on April 1st I will be doing a drawing for the prize winner, and I think it's off to the side a little bit, is the shawl pin that is shaped like a little cat. It's got cat ears. So make sure you post to the FO thread by the end of March, so that way you will be entered into the prize drawing. And we have some really wonderful FOs to add to the ones that I showed you guys in the previous episodes. So I'm really excited by this quarter's knit along. You guys have been doing so many great shawls. So try to make sure the glare is not too bad. So this is from Cat C. So there is a gorgeous shawl, and hopefully you can see. If you can't see it, then go to the Ravelry threads. You can see these better. A gorgeous shawl with that nice lace panel there. Then Nerdy Mama 42 has this very nice colored shawl that she did here. So really showing off what she said. This is Lion Brand's Mandala yarn. So showing off the colors in that yarn. Manda B is one of my test knitters for the Dame Nature shawl. So the shawl that I just showed you guys, that is her version of it. Turned out really fantastically. Then Cat C is back with another shawl. This is Nordic Wind, and I just love these colors. I mean, if you know much about me, you can tell these are my colors. So love the colors there. And then Harps 57 shows the magic of blocking, which, by the way, this is just a gorgeous project, but she did a pre-blocking and post-blocking photos. So just look at the difference there. First of all, look at the gorgeousness of that lace. This was a test knit for the designer Anna Victoria, who does amazing shawls. But there's the pre-blocked. You can still see that it's pretty, but wow, blocking is magic. So here are a couple of other pictures, because this shawl definitely deserves to be shown in detail. And hopefully you can see this on the screen, but it is a beaded shawl. Can you see the beads that are in there? Again, if you can't see that from the video, go to the podcast group on Ravelry and then the FO thread for this knit along, and you'll be able to see the pictures. Because not only is it gorgeous, but it's gorgeous with beads. It's fantastic. Then we have Cher 1967, who has this really nice shawl, which I didn't realize until she posted about it, that it's done out of bulky weight yarn. So that's really fascinating, and just thinking that that lace work, just the kind of the dimension, what is the word I'm looking for? Dimensions, the scale of the lace work on bulky yarn is really interesting. So we have that entry, and then the last one so far is from Summer White, and this is actually something made out of my Camelot yarn, but I love the colors that she picked. Hopefully you can see those. So really like how the colors work together, and I got to see this one in person at my Knitting Guild meeting. It was the project that she brought to show off there, and I don't know how well you can see the details in it, but just kind of the design in there, in the center panel. Hopefully you can see that a little bit, and the texture along the edge is just really a really neat project. So again, go to the Ravelry group so you can see the pictures a lot better than me trying to show you guys, holding it up to the camera. So thanks so much for everyone who's participated so far. This has been a really, really great knit along. I know that there are some other projects in the works. I'm not the only one still knitting on my knit along project. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else you guys come up with. And I also need to remember that it's not going to be too much longer before we need to start thinking about next quarter's theme. So it's not quite time yet, but if you do have some ideas, or you might want to start thinking of some ideas for the theme that you might want to nominate for the next quarter, and probably looking at the calendar, probably right around the next episode, maybe the week, so a little bit before, I will start taking nominations, and then we'll vote kind of in that last week of March. So look for the nomination thread pretty soon. So for this episode, I skipped the shawl section, and I also skipped the what I'm reading and watching section, mostly because I've mentioned before, I'm running out of shawls to talk about, shawls that I've made in the past. And then for what I'm reading, watching, I don't have a lot to really say. I'm still reading the Throne of Glass series, enjoying that. But there's really not a lot that that I think really I need to share with you guys yet. Hopefully that will change. Next week is spring break. I'm hoping to take Luke. I think I'm gonna go take him to see A Wrinkle in Time. I'm not 100% sure. I know I want to see it. So we'll see. Might take him to go see it. And probably, I don't know what else is playing. Maybe there's some special at the theater for spring break. Might take Luke to see some movies next week. But anyway, so that is it for this episode, and I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me talk about what's on my needles and what I've been working on. Thank you so very much for taking the time out of your day to listen to me. But make sure this is not just a one-sided conversation. I love hearing back from you. So if you go to Ravelry, there is a group for the podcast if you're not already a member. It's just T-Shirts and Shawls podcast, so pretty easy to find, or I will link it up in the show notes. So go over to the group for the podcast, and there is a discussion thread for each episode. So I hope you will find the discussion thread for this episode and pop in with any comments that you have. There are threads for the knit along, both the chat thread and the FO thread. There are threads. There's a questions for Karen thread that if you want me to answer any question on a future episode, post your question in that thread. And there's just a general chat thread. If you want to talk about something that doesn't quite fit into any of the other threads, then you can post there. So I really enjoy having not just me talking to you on the camera. I really like that conversation. So I hope that you will take some time to also pop over to Ravelry and join the group if you haven't already, and then join in the conversation. So until next time, happy knitting!